Okay, so you want to buy a luxury hotel chain. Here's the first thing nobody tells you. The hotel itself is basically a rounding error. Marriott owns or leases less than 1% of the 9,300 plus properties flying its flags. Hilton doesn't want your building either. The biggest hotel brands on earth spent the last 30 years quietly getting out of the hotel business, the real estate part anyway, and building something else entirely. A fee machine that collects money whether the hotel down the street is packed or empty. So who actually owns the building you're picturing when you say Four Seasons or Ritz-Carlton? Some sovereign wealth fund, some REIT, some family office that found that out the hard way. Host Hotels and Resorts, the largest lodging REIT in America, owns 79 hotels and roughly 42,500 rooms, and operates none of them. It just cuts the checks and lets Marriott, Hilton, and Hyatt run the buildings under contract. Keep that split in mind, owner versus operator, because every number in this video runs through it. Let's talk price. Tier 1, the cheap seats, relatively speaking. A luxury build today runs over $1 million per key, and that's before you've hung a single chandelier, per HVS's 2025 Development Cost Survey. Construction costs for this category are up 45% since the pandemic. Tier 2, the trophy build. LVMH tried to put up a Cheval Blanc in Beverly Hills. $465 million just for the land. Another $666 million budgeted for construction. Call it $1.1 billion for 115 rooms. $5.8 million per key. Local residents voted it down anyway. LVMH walked. Tier 3, the conversion nightmare. Amman, New York. Roughly $300 million to build out the hotel portion alone. North of $1.45 billion once you count the building purchase and the residences bolted onto it. Over $3 million a room. And here's the math that should scare you off before you start. At 65% occupancy, a $1 million per key hotel needs roughly a $1,000 average nightly rate just to break even on the build. Actual luxury hotels are averaging $394 a night. You are, structurally, underwater from the day you open the doors, unless you're doing something the room rate alone was never designed to cover. Now, the rules of the game. You don't just build a luxury hotel and call it the Ritz. You sign a franchise or management agreement, and the brand tells you what you're allowed to spend, on what, and when. It's called a PIP, a Property Improvement Plan, and it lands every 5 to 7 years whether you want it or not. Standard rooms, $8,000 to $25,000 apiece. Full renovations on an older property, $30,000 to $40,000 a key, sometimes more. The Ritz-Carlton in South Beach needed $90 million after Hurricane Irma just to keep flying the flag. Miss the PIP deadline and you don't lose a discount, you lose the name on the building. So how does anyone actually make money here? Not from the room, from the fee stack sitting on top of the room. Marriott's franchise agreements charge continuing royalties of 4 to 7% of room revenue, plus up to 4% of food and beverage. Management contracts add a base fee, roughly 1 to 3% of total revenue, and then an incentive fee on top, commonly around 10% of gross operating profit above a hurdle the owner had to negotiate for. Every layer stacks. None of it requires the brand to own a single brick. Then there's the loyalty program, which sounds like a guest perk and functions like a tax. Marriott's Bonvoy intellectual property fees hit $716 million last year, almost double what they were 6 years ago. Co-branded credit card fee revenue is on pace to grow 35% to nearly $1 billion in 2025. The owner funds the points redemption. The brand keeps the card economics. In 2025, Marriott's own franchisees went public about it, an actual owner revolt over who pays for the loyalty program the brand profits from. This is the architecture, laid bare. The metric that matters industry-wide is RevPAR, revenue per available room, occupancy times rate. In 2025, luxury RevPAR grew about 3%, purely on rate. while the entire US hotel industry limped along at a forecasted 0.1% growth. Luxury is the outperformer. But notice who gets paid first when a luxury hotel's revenue rises. Royalties and base fees get paid off the top line before the owner sees $1 of profit. The incentive fee is the only piece tied to how the business actually performs. And it's the first thing that shrinks in a downturn, which is exactly why analysts watch it as a recession signal.
Now, the cases. Because this industry has produced a genuinely historic disaster, a genuinely elegant escape from the whole trap, and one owner who proved the trap isn't fatal if your money isn't in a hurry. The disaster. The Waldorf Astoria, New York. In October 2014, China's Anbang Insurance bought it from Hilton for $1.95 billion, the largest price ever paid for a single American hotel. In March 2017, Anbang closed the hotel almost entirely, gutting the upper floors to build 375 private condominiums and shrinking the hotel itself down to 375 rooms from roughly 1,400. 3 years later, Anbang itself collapsed, seized by Chinese regulators, bankrupt. Ownership passed to a state-run successor. The Waldorf sat closed, earning essentially nothing for 8 years. It finally reopened in 2025. By early 2026, the new owners were already reportedly shopping it for sale. A $1.95 billion trophy, 8 years of silence, and a parent company that went bankrupt before the renovation was even finished. The escape. Isidore Sharp. He opened his first hotel in 1961, a 125-room motor inn in Toronto, and nearly ruined himself trying to be a real estate developer. So he stopped. He built Four Seasons around the idea that the brand doesn't need to own the building, it needs to manage it, better than anyone else, and collect the fee. No sub-brands diluting the name, no owning the real estate risk, just management contracts stacked on other people's capital. In 2007, he took the company private with Bill Gates and Prince Al-Walid bin Talal as partners. Today, Four Seasons is targeting 180 managed properties by 2033, almost entirely on real estate it will never have to sell in a panic. The exception. Qatar's Sovereign Wealth Fund. In 2015, its Mayborn vehicle bought Claridge's, the Connaught, and the Berkeley in London for roughly £1.6 billion. Claridge's alone reportedly runs above 90% occupancy at over £2,000 a night, generating an estimated 8% to 10% yield for its owner. Same trap as the Waldorf. Trophy real estate, brutal capital requirements, but patient, low-cost sovereign money doesn't need to refinance on someone else's schedule. It's the same bet Anbang made. It only looks smart because nobody's forcing a sale. Let's run the numbers two ways. Optimistic. You're the brand, not the owner. You sign a management contract on someone else's $200 million luxury build. Base fee at 2% of revenue on a hotel doing $40 million a year, $800,000. Incentive fee at 10% of a healthy $12 million gross operating profit, $1.2 million. $2 million a year, and you never wrote a check for the building, the PIP, or the mortgage. That's the Four Seasons model, and it scales to hundreds of properties without ever touching a construction loan. Realistic. You're the owner. You put up $200 million for the real estate. You're paying royalties of 5% of room revenue, a management fee on top, and funding the loyalty program redemptions out of your own margin before you see $1. Every 5 to 7 years, a PIP bill lands for tens of thousands per key, whether your occupancy is strong or not. If the market turns, like it did for Anbang, you can be sitting on a $2 billion trophy asset that generates nothing for years, while the brand's fee income barely notices because franchise and base fees get paid regardless of your profit line. So here's the takeaway. A luxury hotel chain isn't one business, it's two, wearing the same name on the awning. One version collects royalties, incentive fees, and credit card economics on capital someone else raised and barely owns a doorknob. The other version puts up the $1 million a key building, absorbs every PIP bill and every recession, and hopes the brand's fee stack doesn't eat the whole margin before a profit shows up. Marriott and Hilton figured out decades ago which side of that split to be on. Anbang found out, expensively, which side they'd actually bought into.
Qatar found out the same split can work fine if you can afford to never sell. The S&P 500 returns about 10% a year with no PIP deadline, no loyalty program tax, and no 8-year renovation. But it also never gets to put management fees on a building it will never own.